Hi guys, hello and welcome back to another video here on the channel. So you all know Dave the Reptile Man by now. For a while, Dave, we've been wanting to do this reptile show, haven't we?
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, so what we want to do, guys, what we've been thinking is we were concerned about like basically folks going out and buying snakes and stuff, not really knowing what they were doing, and you know, if I was buying one for like my boy, like I really wouldn't know where to start, what to do, or anything. So this is pretty much what we're doing with series 4, guys. This is going to be part 1 of 4.
Yeah.
Okay, and to start off, we're going to go for snakes, aren't we?
We're definitely going to go for snakes.
So, you all know Dave the Reptile Man, and you know this little guy. You may have seen him in a video a long time ago. The vlog of yours.
Yeah. How long ago was that?
About 6 months ago, I think it was one of my first videos, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. Definitely. Okay, guys, so I want to introduce you to Simba.
Right. This is Simba.
Hello, fella. How are you?
Yeah.
So, Dave, if I was going out with Geordie now, and I was looking to buy this beautiful fella, what would I be looking for? How would I go about it? And what tips would you give myself, or indeed anybody out there in the internet world? Okay,
so first of all, let's just say what type of snake Simba is. Simba is a ball python. So basically, this is why I've chose this outcome of the video today is why I chose ball pythons, is because I think they're the best beginner snake in my opinion.
And why is that?
They make great pets. As you can see, they're very docile.
He's very curious, isn't he?
Yeah, love being handled, very curious type of snake. And overall, they're a great beginner snake, and we're going to go over different parts in a bit. Just some little facts about ball pythons. First of all, they can live extremely long time. People don't realise how long snakes can live. So, you know, if you keep your snake in great conditions, meet its perfect care needs and that, you know, a snake can live between 20 to 40 years.
Really?
Oh yeah, definitely.
Wow.
So they're a lifelong pet, so make sure you know what you're doing. Also, you know, they don't grow that big. You know, Simba here is a male, so males tend to get a little bit smaller than your females, and Simba's pretty much adult size now. He won't get any bigger. So if I can stretch him out, he's obviously curled up a bit, but this is how big he gets. It's about anywhere between 3 to 6 feet. As I said, your females get bigger.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
So Dave, what would we do with this little fella? I go out, I've picked what snake I'd like, and all that. I've done a little bit of research. How would I house this guy? What would I put him in? What would that look like?
Okay, so first of all, the main thing is you want to go and get your tank pretty much before you go out and buy a snake.
Would it be a good idea to basically get a bigger tank, knowing the fact of how big he's going to be?
Not really, no. So depending on what size snake you go for, you want to try and do some research and get a vivarium or a tank that suits your snake's needs.
Okay, so something like this one here,
yeah?
Okay.
You can get different types. You can keep your snake in glass tanks, sort of glass aquariums, or you can keep them in wooden vivariums. Now, personally, I prefer your wooden vivariums, and I keep Simba in a wooden vivarium. The pros to wooden vivariums is they retain heat better. You can have different. You can maintain your temperatures, and as I said, you need to look at the different sizes. So I keep Simba in a 3-foot vivarium. As I said, you might want to go out and do some research on different tank sizes. The things you want to go out, once you've got your tank and set your tank up, the things you might want to consider is obviously snakes, they like to hide basically. So you want to get different little hide boxes for your snake. You can get decorations like branches. You can get some ornaments if you want.
Cool, okay. And I take it you'd obviously just be able to buy them like sort of like from the pet shop.
You can go out and buy them from the pet shop. You know, you can decorate your tank to your whatever preference you want.
Well, the silly question would be like a maximum or like a minimum amount, or would you just kind of do like whatever you felt fit? Would you be happy with?
So basically, ball pythons, the funny little animals, you know, they tend to be quite shy. Another thing I forgot to mention, ball pythons are nocturnal, so you know, during the day they will go out and hide. So the more hides you have in your enclosure, the better. So it's giving them it's giving different options for your snake.
Excellent.
To choose a preference. I'll go into it later, but we'll talk about hotspot hot spots and cool spots in the tank.
I was going to say, because I'm not very knowledgeable, but I know in conversations we've had, like off camera, you've said like obviously about temperature being really important for all reptiles and stuff.
So as I said, a little thing about ball pythons, in my opinion as well, and probably a lot of people will say the same thing who keep them. A happy snake is a well-hidden snake.
A well-hidden snake?
Yeah.
Right, okay.
So if your snake, don't worry, if you don't see your snake during the day, that's perfect, because as I said, ball pythons, they tend to just hide away during the day. They don't like to be seen. But at night, when the lights dim down and that, these are when they're active, they'll come out and explore, looking for food. So going back to the beginning, actually, if you're looking for a snake that's more active during the day, maybe ball pythons aren't the best option for you. You might want to look into a different type of snake.
But in your opinion, though, you could do like a lot worse than this guy, couldn't you?
Oh yeah, definitely.
As a starter species.
Yeah.
So Dave, now we've established starter breeds and housing.
Yeah.
We touched before upon temperature, which obviously is very important for like reptiles and stuff. So what would your advice be upon that, and how would we go about that within his enclosure and stuff?
So, as you probably all know, reptiles are cold-blooded animals, so they can't regulate their body temperature like us. So they need heat source so they can regulate their body temperature. So the best way of going about this is purchasing an overhead heat lamp known as a ceramic heat bulb. Which we have pictured up. So basically, the idea is you want to create a temperature gradient in your enclosure. So what you're going to want to do is you're going to want the heat lamp to be on one side of the enclosure, and you're going to want to create a hot spot. Now, with any heating element you go for, whether it's a heat lamp, you can go and get a heat mat.
Right, so for the folks you'd recommend like the heat bulb?
I would recommend the heat bulb, mainly because heat bulbs last longer.
Yeah.
Think about it as well, out in the wild, you know, in general, anything, where does the heat come from?
Well, it's the sun, isn't it?
Exactly, so it's going to come from above.
Yeah.
And that's what your snakes are looking for. They're looking for above heat. Obviously, the heat bulb as well is going to warm the substrate in the vivarium.
Okay, what's substrate?
So substrate is basically the bedding or the soil that you use.
Right, so again, you're trying to do what you think that in the wild, where you'd be kind of in like a little bit of a den in soil with the heat coming down.
So that the heat's going to heat the soil and create a nice warm spot for them that they can soak up the heat.
Brilliant. Okay.
So as going back to your hot spot and cool spots, so your hot spot is going to be the spot directly under the heat lamp. So you want to get a temperature roughly around 30 to 32 Celsius.
I was going to ask you that, what's a good...
That's your ideal hotspot for these guys, because ball pythons are native to West Africa and Central Africa. They live out in the sort of tropical forests.
Yeah, cool.
So the temperature's quite, high for them. The cool spots is going to be the other end of the vivarium where the heat lamp isn't. So going back to the diagram, in the diagram you can see where the heat lamp is. The other end of the vivarium is going to be your cool spot. So that's going to be the sort of cooler end for your snake. So your snake has, your snake can't regulate its body temperature, so it doesn't know when it's going to overheat or when it's...
So also be like you say, the heat of the sun with the lamp, and sort of like the cool side of the tank could be more as if it's kind of...
Yeah, in the shade. So it could go and find a nice cool area. So your cool area, you want to try and get roughly about 26 Celsius.
Okay, so cool's 26, the warm is 32?
So hot spot 30, 32.
Okay.
Obviously, you're going to want to go out and buy a thermometer. I can't even pronounce it.
Thermometer.
There we go. Yeah. The best ones you can get are your infrared ones. I find this dead useful. Basically, it's like a little laser thing. I'm sure people have been tested with this.
We use it at work, don't we?
Use these at work, COVID and all that.
Bing.
So basically, what you do is you point at whatever service you want to take a temperature reading at, you bang it and it tells you the temperature.
Yeah, so, and how often would you do that during the day? Would you do a couple of times
a day? I do 2 checks, so every morning when I get up, I'll go around my snake enclosure and I'll do a temp check.
Yeah.
And then before I go to bed, I'll do a temp check.
Is that what would you say on temperature, Dave? Are you happy with that?
Last thing, obviously, with any heating element you use, you want to go out and buy a thermostat. I will touch on thermostats dead quick. A thermostat basically is like a temperature regulator. So what you do is it sounds more complicated than what it is, but type it in on the internet and there's some great websites and some great videos you can go and check out.
Yeah.
And it tells you how to set up your thermostats.
What we'll actually do is I'll leave links below.
Yeah, definitely.
In the description, and you can tell me later.
Because honestly, we could be here for hours talking about how you set up your thermostat and your heat lamps and that.
But it's very important, really, though, isn't it? So
I can't touch on that. A thermostat is dead important because it maintains your temperatures, it regulates your temperatures, and it will warn you if the temperature goes up too high or too low. Vital, yeah.
Okay, so we've covered most of the basics. So how do we feed this little fella? What does he eat? When does he eat? And what tips would you give us with regards to feeding them?
Okay, so feeding, as you know, snakes are carnivores. They mainly feed on meat. Well, in fact, they only feed on meat. So the things you can feed, obviously most people know that snakes are a big fan of rats and mice. But there's no harm on variety. I feed my snakes different things. So every now and then I will change the diet up. I will for a chick.
Is that just like a little bit of variety for them?
Yeah, because out in the wild, they're opportunistic animals, aren't they? They're going to take anything that
they can get their hands. They're going to eat anything they can.
Exactly. So every now and then I will change their diet up. So rats, mice, chicks. I know this sounds horrible, but sometimes my pet shop gets frozen hamsters in.
A little bit of controversy there. But they're frozen though, guys, they're not live, obviously these things are dead and they're frozen.
So just something on what Nick just said about live feeding. It is actually illegal here in the UK. Feeding schedule, obviously Simba is pretty much an adult now, so his feeding schedule, I tend to feed him once every 2 to 3 weeks.
Okay.
Juvenile snakes, if you go out and buy a young juvenile snake, they tend to feed once every week.
Am I right in thinking, and I'm totally ignorant here folks, I just tried to call little things and we've had chats, like you don't handle your snake after they've eaten?
Yeah, definitely. So once your snake has eaten and digested the meal, you shouldn't handle them. I'd wait at least 2 days
so obviously
to digest. Because
friendly to
a snake, it takes a long time for a snake to digest its meal because they pretty much digest everything. They'll even digest the bones, break down the bones.
So let this little guy eat. Let him do what he's doing.
You probably know as well, because I must admit I do get a few people that turn around and say, "Oh my God, you keep snakes? Are they venomous?"
That's what I said.
Yeah, all the snakes I keep aren't venomous. You need a license to keep venomous snakes. So Simba is a constrictor. So what he does, and Nick's seeing this, is he will lunge at his prey, grab it, and then he'll coil around it, and he basically squeezes the prey to death. He will then basically swallow his prey whole, and usually once they've eaten they will disappear off into a hide, and you might not see him for a few days because obviously he's digesting his meal.
Usually like you with a hangover.
That's on feeding.
That's brilliant.
Quick one before I forgot to bring it up earlier. Shedding, a lot of people don't know about snakes shed their skin. So as the snake grows, they will obviously shed old scales and they shed their skin. So the signs of shedding is the coloration of the snake will change. It will go a dull, sort of dullish grey colour, and their eyes will basically go a cloudy blue. And you might hear the term in the snake community, going into blue.
Going into blue, that means.
So as I said, their eyes pretty much go like a milky blue. When a snake goes into shed, you want to obviously monitor your snake.
And would you leave them alone, obviously?
Leave them alone, do not handle them, because they will get very stressed, and they actually become blind when they're going into shed, because they shed their whole skin, so they even shed their eye caps.
Their eyelids in it,
because a cool little fact is snakes don't have eyelids, so they can't blink.
Oh, that's something to do.
So when they're going into shed, you want to increase your humidity levels. And I must admit, I forgot to touch on humidity in the housing element. So humidity is a big thing. People get a little bit, I must admit, I was stressed out when I first got my snakes and trying to maintain humidity. But to be honest with Simba, I think the best thing I've learned is just have a decent sized water dish in the enclosure.
Yeah.
And obviously that's in general with any animal, provide fresh water for your snake. I tend to keep the water bowl sort of in the middle of the enclosure, so it's slightly on the warm side, and that will help increase the humidity.
Yeah, to help the process and stuff.
So the tank I have, the humidity levels, the readings I get around about 60%, which is average if you have a water dish.
Yeah.
Going back to when your snake's in shed, you want to increase the humidity slightly, so you get a little spray bottle with some tap water and just spray the tank slightly, and that will increase the humidity levels up.
Yeah.
And when your snake sheds, it should shed a whole full shed in one piece. You know, it comes off like a sock. I know it sounds stupid, but it should just come off in one solid
Excellent.
thing.
Yeah.
If your snake struggles with shed, it will come off in flaky bits, it will look dry, and that's usually an indication that the humidity levels aren't correct, or your snake might have some underlying issues.
So again, to just do exactly what you've done and go back over the process?
Yeah, so just as I said, the main thing is just keep your humidity levels up while they're going into shed. And roughly, depending on how big your snake is, obviously juvenile snakes, as they're growing, baby snakes, they will shed more often because they're growing up.
Yeah.
But Simba here, he roughly sheds maybe once every 3 to 4 months.
Cool.
Obviously, it depends on how often you're feeding as well. And going back to feeding, a lot of people make the mistake of power feeding their snakes. So, you know, they feed the snakes pretty much every week.
Yeah.
Snakes do not need to be fed every week. Obviously, when they're younger, growing up as juveniles, it's okay to feed them. But once they get into an adult size like Simba here, he does not need to be fed every week. Simba can go months without feeding. I've had Simba go on a year-long hunger strike.
No.
Because he was not interested in feeding. So don't stress if your snakes go on hunger strikes. Obviously, if they start losing weight drastically, you might want to go and seek some advice from a vet, because there could be some underlying health conditions. But as I said, overall, snakes can go months without feeding.
Okay, Dave, so we've gone over pretty much everything. Anything else that we need to do? I mean, you're holding this little fella here and he seems quite content and he's happy. And
so the last part is handling your snake, basically, because obviously you go out, you buy a snake and you do want to handle it, because it's obviously cool.
Well, he's quite sociable, this little fella, isn't he? You know what I mean?
Going back, this is why I chose ball pythons as a great beginner snake, because genuinely they're very docile. You know, as you can see, he's happy, he's chilling here. He's obviously very curious because he's never been here before, so he's obviously picking up different scents and having a little sniff of the world around. But as I said, generally they are awesome snakes to keep. Simba's never ever given me a defence posture. He's never gone to strike at me.
What's a defence posture? What would that look like?
A defence posture is they usually go into an S position. Which I'm sure people have heard of. They'll S up their neck. They will obviously hiss at you to warn.
But again, it's all defence mechanisms.
It's all defence mechanisms, as if to say, you know, I'm not interested, leave me alone. Come any closer, I won't go for you.
Well, if at that stage you get bitten, well, it's your own fault, really, isn't it?
So, but basically, you know, learn your snake's body language. It's not rocket science. If a snake's hissing at you,
I mean, jumping on that there quickly, and I've got no problem admitting this on camera. I think most people who watch us, certainly who know me, know the fact that I spent most of my life terrified of snakes. I mean, say a couple of years ago before you and I met, I wouldn't be within 100 miles of this fella. You know what I mean? It's a common, thing. A lot of people are scared of snakes and stuff. And just touching quickly on the behaviour, Dave and I, we had a really good chat and stuff. And Dave explained to me it's not the snakes, it's people. It's knowing their behaviours. And when Dave explained stuff like that to me, over the behaviours, the postures, and all that type of stuff, that put me at ease. And Simba was actually the first snake I handled, wasn't he?
Definitely.
I've gone on since to go to holiday camps with Maddie and Geordie and stuff. And we walked into a reptile convention, and they had a python, and I was like, oh, give me him. You know what I mean? So that was just my little kind of personal anecdote on behaviour and how important it is, and more importantly, like Dave says, know your snake and know the behaviours, isn't it?
I mean, at the end, as Nick said, at the end of the day, I think people are more scared of the snake than the snake. I
spent most of my life terrified of snakes.
And at the end of the day, the snake's more terrified of you.
Yeah, absolutely.
It sees you as a predator.
Yeah.
Obviously, so if you're calm and you're gentle and you act relaxed around the snake's going to act relaxed around you.
He's going to be chill around you.
Yeah. And I mean, don't get me wrong, I've been bit by snakes. I've never been bit by Simba, but I do keep other snakes, and I've been bit plenty of times. And I'm going to be honest with you, it's not as bad as people think it is. It does hurt, obviously, depending on what type of snake you're bit by, but it's never going to do you damage. You know what I mean? It's just, it feels like someone stabbed you with a few little needles.
Well, I've got no problem with that. Not that I actually want to be bitten by a snake.
To be honest, it's more of a shock than anything because they're so quick. When a snake wants to strike you, it's as quick as a blink.
It's in and done.
It's done.
Yeah.
But as I said, overall they're great at handling. They're great pets, and as I said, I love getting Simba out every now and then, and just sitting there watching a movie, or you're playing on your console. And he's happy just chilling.
You chill with him, yeah?
Yeah, he just sits there on my lap, or he'll ball up, or he'll go on a little bit of an explore.
Yeah.
But as I said, they're great.
Excellent.
Absolutely great pets. And going back, know your snake. If your snake wants to be left alone, leave it alone. Don't go and handle it if it's showing you signs of.
But I mean, again, in respect to that, if you've got like a dog.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, like a cat can be more vicious than dogs,
Yeah.
If you've got like a pet that obviously looks a bit stressed or is a little bit teed off that day or something, you don't go near it really.
Exactly.
It's common sense, isn't it? Do you know what I mean?
Everybody wants alone times, and even snakes do.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Absolutely. So, Dave, thank you very much for introducing us to Simba.
Yeah.
How would we finish off then for the folks here who are going to go about getting a wonderful little guy like this?
So, as I said, overall, snakes are awesome pets, and I think they get the bad reputation.
Yeah.
Everybody seems to be scared of snakes, and a lot of the time as well, people don't know why.
Yeah, I blame Indiana Jones, to be honest. That's the cobras. It's one of those things, isn't it? I think this is like the idea why we've actually sat there and wants to make this series, isn't it? To kind of debunk, demystify a really cool pet who do have obviously that reputation and stuff. So is there anything else to add before we finish off here?
Quick one, as I said, overall they're great at keeping as pets. They're very low maintenance and easy to care for. I think the main issue that people get stressed on is the whole initial setup. But once you've got that enclosure set up and you've got your temperatures spot on and you're maintaining your temperatures, these guys don't need any care. Give them fresh water once every 2 days, feed them once every 2 to 3 weeks. That's about it.
I've got a really nerdy question to finish on.
Right.
Well, I've got 2 questions, but one's to you and one's to the guys.
Right.
The first one, he's got beautiful colours.
Yeah.
Can we get him in any other colours?
Yep, so that's a good point. Ball pythons come in, and I mean thousands of different morphs.
Wow.
There's different colorations, all bred by people, like genetics. It's all to do with genes and different. I'm not big on that, but if you do your research, there's some cool stuff into it. Basically, people breed ball pythons to get all these cool different patterns and all that. So Simba here is known as a coral glow ball python, but as I said, there is thousands of different colours. You can get blacks, browns, you can even get pure whites.
Some absolutely beautiful colorations.
But obviously there's different costs, so if you want to go out and buy a snake and there's a specific morph you want, do some research, because some of them are quite expensive.
You will pay for the more design.
Bit like handbags. So the last thing is, overall, is a snake correct for you? As mentioned earlier, these guys can live up to 20 to 40 years, so they're a lifelong pet. They can outlive a dog. So really do your research before you go out and buy a snake. Don't just listen to what I've said, because although I've been keeping snakes for several years now, I'm still learning. There's still things I learn every day about snakes. So there's some great, as I mentioned before, there's some great articles and videos online.
We'll leave the links below.
We'll leave some good links below. Last of all, when you go out and buy a snake, like anything, when you go and buy a dog or a cat, make sure you find a good breeder, someone who knows their stuff, someone who's respectful. As mentioned as well, when you go out and buy any animal as well, even a snake, make sure they're healthy looking. Look to make sure the snake's in great condition, there's no stuck shed on there. Make sure they're healthy weight. Speak to the breeder, make sure they're eating properly, that they're shedding properly, that they're pooing properly.
Absolutely. So this little guy's in good shape and stuff.
Yeah, check their eyes, make sure their eyes are healthy looking. You know, check around the nose and nostril area here. If there's any signs of like fluid build-up or wheezing, that could be a sign of respiratory issues. And just have a little look around on them and make sure there's no bugs on them, because snakes can get parasites on them called snake mites.
Okay.
And these are like little black, you'll just see little black things crawling around on them, and what they do is they'll go underneath the scales and they'll basically suck the blood of it, so they're not nice. So just make sure there's no sign of mites on them. And I must admit, I know Simba's covered in little black things,
but they're not mites.
They're not mites, trust me, they're just the coloration and on it, the pattern on him. But yeah, that's pretty much it.
Okay, well, thank you, Dave. Thank you, Simba. And like we mentioned at the top of the show, this is one of 4, isn't it?
Yeah,
so
definitely.
What are the other ones are doing?
So the other animals we're planning on doing is tarantula, crested gecko, and Australian tree frogs.
Excellent. Okay, I'll tell you what then, guys. I really hope you've enjoyed that. I hope you've enjoyed meeting Simba. You know me and me. You know him. One last thing for me, guys. I'm not going to give you the YouTube garb, but if you would just leave a comment below for me and for Dave, and just let us know if you enjoyed the video, what you think about Simba. Are you interested in actually having a look at snakes and stuff like that? And finally, which other reptile you'd like to see in the next video? So it was what? Tarantula, frog, or gecko?
So give us a poll down below and we'll...
Fantastic.